into a villain because it's just too easy. It's Lord Acton's thing. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. When you give people too much power, people can't really handle it. The best way to keep people honest is to not give them power. Or at the very least, not give them overwhelming power over another person, which I think is the essential core of MGTOW, is that women have absolute power over men in a marriage, or actually, at this point, not just in a marriage, but in relationships in general, because, she can always accuse you of rape, or she can always accuse you of hitting you or something like that. If you just do one thing that she doesn't like, and people, I believe victims and me too and shit like that, and then now your life is over. So MGTOW is a response to the absolute power that women have been given over men because they clearly can't handle it and things are clearly getting fucked up because of that. And let me just say it this way, because there's this principle in martial arts, and I learned this from judo, because in judo it's a little bit more obvious, but in other martial arts it's very obvious too. So you might have heard this before, is what they would say in judo is that if someone doesn't want to be thrown, you're not going to throw them. Now, if you are super, super good at throwing people, you might throw somebody who doesn't want to be thrown. But in general, you don't get to throw somebody unless you open yourself up to attack from them. And much like the relationship in martial arts where you can't attack somebody unless you open yourself up to attack, I think it's very related. You can't do harm unto somebody else unless you harm yourself, and you can't do good unto somebody else unless you do good unto yourself first, which is why I think the people who do the most harm are the people who absolutely hate themselves. It's the essential part of a good villain is that they have to hate themselves, otherwise they wouldn't be able to so effectively attack other people. And so when you do bad things to other people, you're also doing the same thing to yourself. Well, there's a reason that women who are super attractive are also really, really unintelligent. I mean, it happens once in a blue moon, but it's very rare that you'll see some women in STEM fields or some female inventor or some female super intelligence that's also super attractive, because much like the idea of mind control is very tempting to any sort of female, the idea that they can use their attractiveness to get the things they want, which is a softer form of mind control, is so tempting that every woman or almost every woman who is attractive just uses that to get what they want, and they weaken themselves for it. Because if I sit there and get men to do everything for me, I can eventually do nothing for myself. Now, I could be actually very, very gifted naturally, and what I would apply it to is if I had a high IQ as a very attractive female, what I would do is I would just spend all that IQ on learning how to manipulate as many guys as possible if I was going to be this stereotypical female. The problem with doing that is that if you take things as a whole, wisdom, which I would account to, and I think this is a pretty common definition of wisdom, which would be experience, trumps IQ. If someone tells you how to do something, it's a lot faster than having to figure it out for yourself. Not to say that you shouldn't figure stuff out for yourself, because you should, but if you try to figure out absolutely everything by yourself, you're going to be spending, all the time it took for everybody else to figure it out. Because the people, I hate when people discredit, and this is a MGTOW channel, so we're probably not this stupid. But when people discredit the people of the past, they say, "Oh, that was back in the Roman days. We're much more intelligent than they were then." No, we're not. I think a lot of the very, very intelligent people are the people of the past. And I don't think, because IQ is genetic, I don't think it's really changed that much. But the amount of technology and the amount of wisdom we have, the amount of experience, that's what's changed. And that's what allows us to do all this crazy shit. Whereas in the past, it may have taken someone with an IQ of 200 to figure out, hey, that there's these things in the sky called planets. Now everybody knows that. You know that even if you're one of the dumbest people in society, like even probably a retarded person could understand that there are other planets in the solar system where it was a massively advanced concept back in the day. Or even just the fact that the moon is smaller than the sun. If you look at from the naked eye, the moon looks like it's the same size as the sun, but the only reason it looks like that is because it's closer to the Earth than the sun is. I mean, how many thousands of years did it take us to figure out that they're different sizes? So the tragic story I'm telling here is the story of the woman who is super attractive and cannot do anything for herself. And I'm sure you've seen this play out in your own life, or you've seen this play out maybe through stories of other people. But a lot of times, you have this woman who's super, super hot when she's young. She rides the cock carousel, doesn't really get married, doesn't trap a man into marriage. And then she's 35, her attractiveness fades, and her whole life she's used her attractiveness to get men to do things for her. She did not get a permanent male to do things for her, and now she is fucked. She's lost her beauty, she's obtained no wisdom during the time period where she was attractive, and now she's screwed. And I mention this, of course, because this tragic story, the story of what not to do, applies to men as well, particularly in this day and age where it applies more so than ever, because for the past 50 years at least, if not longer than that, society as a whole, the government, particularly the government in Hollywood, has been trying to feminize men as much as possible, whether it's through schooling or whether it's through programs like Oprah, where men should be emotional, men should be vulnerable, men should be a little bit more dependent. Or the structure of school is that I'm the teacher, whatever I say goes, I'm in charge, you can never question me. Or even the fact that, you're in school for 12 years in the current day. And this is Bernie Sanders' big argument. Well, what are high school kids going to do when they get out of high school? You can't get a job when you get out of high school, so now we have to go to college. And you think maybe the better message with these people is that the government had you for 12 years, and after that amount of time, you go out to try to get a job, and you're no more valuable than people who have no skill. You're no more valuable than an illegal alien who has almost no schooling. So why would 4 to 6 years more of free government education be any better when the past 12 years of free government education taught you pretty much nothing? In fact, I think there's a lot to say for if you sit there and stake your own money on your education, you're going to make sure that thing that you learn gets used. In fact, my parents paid for my college. They spent like $30,000 or so. Actually, my mother paid for my college. She spent like $30,000 or so on my college degree. I do not use my college degree. I spent $3,000 on a yoga certification, and I've made quite a bit more money. Well, in the sense that the money I made off a kinesiology degree has been zero. I made infinitely more money as a yoga teacher, which was the certification that I spent on myself. And not only do I use that certification a lot more, but it took a lot less time, and of course, it was a lot less money. There's something to be said for when you have to pay your own shit, and you tend to care a lot more. And much like the message of this would be that if you start having people do everything for you, especially things that you can already do for yourself, you're going to weaken yourself. Like, I had a friend, he moved. I guess we're still friends technically, because we still send memes to each other on texting and stuff like that. But I had a friend who moved, and he was very, very good at cars. And I'm someone who's a little bit mechanically gifted if I'm put in the right situation. But in this particular situation, I was not put in the correct situation, where I had a friend who was good. He was so good at cars. He was like customizing cars and adding special stuff on his own cars, like doing bed liners cars, like adding roof racks and putting custom parts into his engine, like crazy stuff, like rebuilding cars. Crazy stuff. Easily could be an auto mechanic if he wanted to, though he didn't want to be an auto mechanic. And so every time I had a problem with my car, I'd always have him fix it. And maybe I'd do a little bit, like if I had to pull like a door panel off or something like that, maybe I'd do like the easy stuff. But anytime something got hard, I'd always say, hey, can you help me? He'd be like, yeah, sure. The problem with that is because I didn't struggle myself and learn how to deal with all the frustrating parts of fixing a car and learn it myself, or even just learn how to Google that stuff. I don't really know that much about fixing cars, despite how much work has been done on my car that he's helped with. Whereas on the flip side, because I do have a lot of mechanical knowledge, or I do have a lot of mechanical sense, and not just maybe high IQ plus interest in the subject. But whatever it is what it is. Because when I did mechanical stuff on my own, when I changed that to electronics, someone who is not very competent at cars, which is just a mechanical skill, is very, very competent with electronics. Extremely. And every single thing I learned about electronics, I learned by myself. So when I went to my friend to fix my car for me, instead of learning how